Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the KeyPro training titled Communicating Change to Employees. This is just a reminder that today's presentation will be recorded and posted on the Whitburn Center's website and YouTube channel. We ask that you please keep your mics on mute. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. My name is Lisa Lewis, and I'm the Administrative Manager in the Whitburn Center for Governance and Policy Research. I want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. And before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about the Whitburn Center. The Whitburn Center was established in the fall of 2021 through a generous donation from our founding benefactor, UWO alumni, Jerry Whitburn. Our mission is to conduct nonpartisan, practical, applied research focused on evaluating and improving governance, professional management, and public policy in Wisconsin and beyond. Our vision is to build local government, nonprofit, and community capacity to promote the common good. To do this work, it requires bringing people together in spaces like this one to work together to share knowledge and equip public professionals with tools and resources to better understand the dynamic topic areas surrounding Wisconsin's public sector. We're happy to have all of you join and learn alongside you. With that, I will introduce our presenter. James Thomas began working in higher education over a decade ago as a graduate student. He started off his career in student affairs and enrollment management as the advisor of a mentoring program that assists minority students in navigating their way through college. He has served as the coordinator of a service learning program which generates over 1,000 volunteer hours each semester through facilitating volunteer opportunities for students in their local community. Throughout his experience in higher education, James developed a passion for student mentorship, development, and success. In 2016, James transitioned into the academic role in academic affairs, serving as a lecturer and professor. With experience in several higher education roles, James has experience in the topics of diversity and inclusion, civic and community engagement, social justice, advocacy, and mentorship for student success. James also has experience in community organizing with an emphasis in relationship building within communities and resource allocation. Additionally, James has experience in the field of research exploring the health behaviors and disparities of college students and minority populations. As a public health professional, James uses research as an advocacy tool to close the gaps in health disparities and to build cultural competence in the health field. James received his bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in public health from Georgia Southern University. And now I will pass things off to you, James.
All right, thank you, Lisa, for that introduction. Good afternoon, and I'm glad to be here to be able to share this presentation with you guys. Just a little housekeeping beforehand. Everyone is able to see my screen. If you're able to see it, could someone just give me like a thumbs up or... All right, good. We're good to go. Great. All right. So just a little bit about me. When it comes to presenting, I've worked in higher ed. I've been a professor, and I'm familiar with working in the higher ed arena. Sometimes I get tired of hearing myself talk. So just to say, if you have any input, feel free to type it in the chat. Feel free to mute yourself and engage in the dialogue. Is totally fine with me. And if you also have any questions, feel free to ask, or we will have a question and answer period towards the end of the presentation. All right, so our topic is communicating during times of change. One of the things about communication in general is that communication can be difficult, especially during times when there's going to be drastic changes. So some of the lines that you might hear when those conversations are attempted or begin is that topic shouldn't come up at work. I don't want to talk about this. Why are we talking about this? I'm tired of talking about this. Can't believe you said that. Why did you say that? Why do you feel this way, etc. So in general, why do you guys feel that conversations during times of drastic change are difficult? What makes it difficult? These are some of the responses, but why do you guys feel it may be difficult? Why do you feel it may be difficult?
We're in a time of change right now, so maybe we're having difficulty even communicating today. Um, but certainly, I would, if you don't mind me just chiming in, James. I think sometimes, at least in a university or in a government setting, it might be the conversations feel repetitive. That you're constantly, especially if you're dealing with someone maybe that works for you, that they have a complaint, it's a legitimate complaint, but there's literally nothing you can do about it. So you feel like you're not making any progress, and it just feels like complaining.
Exactly. It's all, is based in how the conversation or communication may come off to others. Um, as in, you may relay a feeling of how you feel about a situation or a topic, and nothing's really done about it, or there's no significant change. So it comes off as you just kind of reiterating, kind of just what we call beating a dead horse. Um, for lack of a better analogy. Michelle also said because politics in the office is a no-go. That is very big as well, is that certain topics are just seen as it's better that we don't talk about it, because if you reveal how you feel about something, now I know how you feel, and I may differ with how you feel, and then it kind of creates tension. But in that area, one of the best things to do is to learn how to have tough conversations, and during times of change. And change in general is very challenging. A lot of people can be very resistant to change because when we get in that same system, it becomes second nature to us and we're used to it. So when it comes to change, dealing with the change itself can be very difficult, but also trying to communicate while that change is a whole nother layer of feeling vulnerable and uncomfortable in a certain setting. So, um, one of the biggest things that we want to talk about during this presentation is how to start those conversations. Um, Also, COVID brought up a lot of opinions that people had people ready to walk out when regulations came down. Exactly. Um, if there's like a common opinion or a regulation that comes up and we feel strongly against it or we're strongly for it, and then somebody else is strongly, on the opposing end, it can create some type of tension between us and another person as well. And one thing I've learned about tough conversations, we're not necessarily avoiding the topic, we're trying to avoid the tension or the feelings that come after the topic is discussed. That's what we're trying to avoid. But we're going to talk a little bit today about how to actually have those conversations and how to make those conversations a little bit easier. So, one of the first things we're going to talk about is self awareness. It all starts with us individually. We need to be able to understand ourselves, how we feel in certain settings, how we feel in conversations, how we feel about certain topics, and how we um, may be comfortable or uncomfortable talking about certain topics. What are some of your tendencies when it comes to a certain topic? Do you get defensive? Do you feel very vulnerable and uncomfortable? Do you still provide a welcoming, open environment, open to differences and dialogue in that setting? Or, do you kind of tap out of the conversation and kind of withdraw and just kind of let other people handle the conversation, while you just kind of sit back and have your own opinions that you don't want to express because of the tension that may come out? Um, Ask yourself, what do I need to be comfortable with to have this conversation? What needs to be there? And a lot of times you talk to employees, um, especially in the higher ed setting, they may say, well, I need to be able to talk about this without feeling having residual feelings towards me for sharing my honest opinion. I need to um, be able to share my opinion without fear of being retaliated against. Um, or I need to be able to share my feelings without being labeled. Those are things that we need to be self-aware of. What makes you comfortable in those conversations, and what preconceived ideas do you bring to the conversation? What do you have bias? Do you already have um, a strong way of thinking about the certain topic before it's even really accurately discussed? How do you feel about the topic? How do you feel about um, the work environment. How do you feel about other employees and their opinions and their personality? Those are some things that we really need to be aware of to make sure they don't interfere in the conversation themselves. Because sometimes, it's very popular in society when we're trying to have tough conversations. Is not uncommon for ad hominem attacks to start happening. It's not uncommon for the conversation to kind of sway another way rather than actually staying on a topic and coming up with a solution. We kind of deflect with something else and say, well, what about this? Or what we call the whataboutisms, when, not staying focused on the subject at hand. So that's something that we should I would say that's one of the top out of these four. One of the top two is, what preconceived ideas do you bring to the conversation? Being a female veteran, talking to male veterans about erectile dysfunction has been the most difficult to have, and setting the rapport ahead of the combo has really made the veteran trust and open up with me. Exactly. So finding that connection between yourself and them as well, and having that rapport basically can create a system of trust where conversations are easier. Not necessarily easier as far as subject matter, but they're able to be had. All right. And great point about whatism. That's very popular. And you see a lot of that on social media and in politics. And people kind of get the pat on the back for the whataboutisms. And we start to think that's how we're supposed to hold tough conversations. But all it really does is deflect from the real issue. And we're not able to address and come up with solutions. So just talking about that, I just touched on it a little bit. In today's time, the environment, the social environment, is different. We've seen on the news, we've seen a lot more violent attacks in the last 10 years. That's been broadcast on the news, on social media, because we have more social media now than we've ever had before. But being able to kind of document that and give opinions on that has led to some people being more vocal, but also some kind of leaving the conversation because they don't want to be seen or labeled as X, Y, and Z. We've been through more divisive times. Social media means we're on the know. Every second we are able to access people's lives simply, especially celebrities, simply just from having social media, Facebook. Not even just celebrities, but say a family friend. One of the reasons why Facebook is so popular is because we're able to see what is going on in someone else's life, whether they want us to or not. We can look at pictures and see where this person is going. Even on Facebook, Instagram, you can actually tag where you were at certain moments. You were at this restaurant, you were at this museum, you were at, this attraction. We're able to know the information about a person. All right. And the workforce is slowly changing. When I was coming up, when I was a kid, the workforce was mostly baby boomers. In today's time, we have baby boomers, millennials, and Generation Z. Right. So you have three different mixtures within the workforce that all have differing attitudes. All right. So basically, this slide kind of paints a picture of what's going on in our society today. So, what exactly is happening, and how has the world changed? How has society shifted? We have to be aware of that, because the previous slide was self-awareness, but we also need to be aware of what's going on around us, and being able to have those conversations means that we need to know who we're talking to and how we talk to them. Michelle brings up a good point. This is why emotional intelligence and social intelligence have been coming up so much in the human resource development world. Change how we manage, soften the blow by buying a buy-in from personnel. That's also very big as well. This has probably been the most social and emotional and social awareness and emotionally intelligent workforce that I would say within the last 50 years in this country, because there's been a lot of emphasis on how aware we are. There's talk, we have diversity trainings on different subjects. We have mandatory professional development webinars and things. You guys are in one right now because we're trying to be socially aware. We're trying to learn how to have those tough conversations during change. So being aware of what's going on around us helps us as well, because in politics, they call this being out of touch. You're kind of talking to a group of people, but you're not really speaking to what they need to hear or what, from their experiences. So being in that moment where we hear another person's concerns, and we're able to understand another person's background, their beliefs, why they may believe the way that they believe, that can help us come up with ways to be effective in communicating as well. Because um, communicating change to someone may not be the easiest thing to do when you kind of have this bias towards a person without really understanding who they are and why they think that way. Um, so what do we do? Number one, you have to do your homework. And homework is not something that, we got to always just go do research. Sometimes homework is actually just being observant, hearing your coworkers talk, hearing the administration talk, just noticing the things that they hold valuable, noticing the things that they think are a priority. How do we observe and take that in to be able to communicate different types of change to the people that we're serving? All right. Um, Michael says, I wonder if universities are unique too. Everyone is smart, everyone thinks their work is important, and we are used to a level of autonomy and control can make give and take feel foreign. Exactly. Think about it. You have a lot of people in one area or one setting with credentials. Predominantly, you have people with doctorates, you have people with masters, you have people with specialists who know their stuff. And communication in that area can be very tricky and challenging, because if I have a background, for example, you guys just read in my bio, I have a master's, bachelor's, and a doctorate in public health. That's my primary field. Um, if we're in a conversation about healthcare, or we're in a conversation about how the community is affected by the university or how we do things, then I'm going to have strong views from a health standpoint, while somebody else who is, all about student affairs is going to look at things from a student enrollment standpoint. We're trying to increase numbers. We're trying to keep kids in school. We're trying to make sure the students are supported, while I'm more so looking at it from a health standpoint. So those two can very well conflict. And that's why we have to do the homework with each other, on each other, to understand, okay, this is what is a priority to you. This is a priority to me. All right. Be prepared for the conversation. That is going to be a result of doing your homework. You're going to be prepared. You're going to be able to go in to the conversation, be able um, to uh, have the facts. And that's another very, very important piece as well. A lot of times we go into conversations with assumptions. And assumptions are okay sometimes, but we really need to get down to the facts of a situation. Because how many times have you heard conversations start off with someone explaining something that they don't know as far as a fact, but they're explaining it from the standpoint of they heard this is what's going to happen if we do such and such and such. And sometimes a lot of times it's not even the case. All right. Um, Understanding the difference between tribal benefits versus the rest of the veteran population. Tribal members can be very difficult to open up. That is a very big one as well. In higher ed, we can see those who maybe started working at the institution at a previous time, and the vision, as administration changes, the vision can really change for a university. And that's very difficult to deal with. I know at the university I went to, there was, way before I even attended, when I was in elementary school, it was always a very strong focus on the arts. And then when the new administration came, when I actually started attending the school, maybe like 10, 15 years later, there was a very strong emphasis on research, because research is where the funding is, and we need funding to help grow this institution. And some of the older faculty members who have been here 30 years, they disliked it. They were not for it at all, because they were like, as long as I've been at this university, this has been the focus. This is what works well. This is what we're known for. And now we're totally kind of putting that on the back burner to focus on that. So that tribal benefits is a very intricate piece. And by homework, do you mean metacognitive thinking? That's a part of it as well. Like I said, it can kind of fit in with the observations, but also homework can be actually doing research. Um, Looking up certain things, looking at policies, looking at demographics, looking at what other institutions have done, and being able to combine the two. That is the best way to kind of prepare for these conversations, right? And then we want to look at the key ingredients. What do I need to do, and what do I need to make sure that these conversations happen effectively? Number one, be present, be in the moment. Not only just being in the moment, but also be there when these conversations are happening. Make sure that your presence is made mention of, or that you're known. Introduce yourself to people in these meetings, because sometimes uh, you can be in a meeting and uh, give an opinion, and your opinion is not prioritized, simply because a person may not know who exactly you are and what exactly is it that you do. Because if you are, say, this person who's over student affairs, right? Or you work in the division of student affairs, and you give an opinion of, this is what our students need. Someone else in academic affairs may disagree, but they may not understand. You have a firsthand account of how this affects students, versus someone else who may have a distant view of how this affects students. And avoiding work burnout. Work burnout is very important, um, which goes into taking care of yourself. Um, Burnout raises emotions, or can increase emotions. And when our emotions increase, it decreases our emotional intelligence and our social awareness. It basically takes, when we're burnt out, the focus is on how much we've been working, what doesn't work, and what's going wrong, instead of how we can collaborate and come together. So when we come to these meetings and we're burnt out, we're going to be focused on, how do I relieve, myself of these duties, of the stress? How do I make it work? That's going to be our focus, instead of actually looking at the whole picture from a holistic standpoint. All right. Um, exactly. Just working in higher ed, I've seen it. And actually, I give you guys an example. Going to school at the height of COVID, um, I have friends that are professors. The burnout was really high. Having classes online, not really having students engage with the information or the course, not really paying attention, not having anyone in the classroom. And then at the end of the semester, you're getting a whole lot of emails saying, hey, I'm missing this, I don't understand this, and you've gone over it. The focus is no longer on student success. It's like, okay, how do I solve this problem? How do I hold these students accountable? And the conversation shifted from, this is what we've been doing, let's work on this and build this to help the students succeed even more. It shifted from that to, okay, how do we not how do we make sure that these students are learning? It's kind of like regressing a little bit, going back. Diplomacy goes a long way and establishing our credibility. One of the things, like I said, making sure that people know who we are and who we represent is very important. Establishing that credibility, think about the area that you work in as your area of expertise, right? If you're a financial aid consultant or counselor, if you work in student affairs, working with veteran students, or you're working with those students with who need accommodations, who may have disabilities, you are the expert because you have a firsthand experience in that area, right? Now, we don't want to walk into a meeting and say, well, I know what I'm talking about, and you don't. And I know for sure none of you guys would do that, but use your expertise to an advantage to have these conversations because you have insight that other people don't have, right? You have the experience that other people don't. For example, I remember when I defended my dissertation and I was kind of nervous. And one of the things that my dissertation chair told me to really help give me confidence is this is your research. You are the expert in this area. There's nobody in that room who knows more about your research than you do. So take that and own it. And that helps us with establishing our credibility. And it also helps us put into perspective of the things that we want to say in a meeting. All right. Get excited. Like I said at the beginning, one of the reasons why we're resistant to having these conversations is that we are fearful of the tension or the result after the meeting or after the conversation, right? But we can get excited about this because one of the things that's been shown is that when we can have difficult conversations together, it helps bring us closer. All right. When we're able to tell each other things, think about it how it was when you were a kid, right? You had a friend, you had that one friend that you told all your secrets to, or that you told whatever that you didn't tell anybody else. You had a deeper emotional connection with that person, right? And we're not necessarily telling secrets in a staff meeting or department meeting, but when we're able to have those conversations, being able to put everything out on the table and people around us understand and accept, not saying that they have to agree, but when they're able to sit around us and accept what we say, and we leave that meeting and things are just the same as they were before, it helps bring us closer together because it helps us build trust with one another, that I can trust you with my words, that I'm explaining myself from the best intentions, not to harm anyone or not to cause any type of tension in our department. But the reason that we're all here is because of is to have the best intentions for this university, right? That helps bring trust within the group. Um, Let people are in a new light, that they are now aware of different things that they may not have been aware of before. You're able to understand other people in the process. You understand how they think, why they think that way, right? Because one of the most confusing things is being able to look at a person and hear a certain statement, and it's easy just to label that person as traditional or stubborn or not willing to grow or something of that sort. But being able to understand somebody else's thought process is very important. Um, Even in our relationships, whether it's family, our significant other, understanding how this person thinks and why they think that way cuts out a lot of tension, cuts out a lot of arguments, cuts out a lot of passive aggressiveness and things of that sort. So just understanding that thought process is very important. Um, Also, communicating why diversity is critical to our growth. Everybody doesn't think the same way. Everybody doesn't come from the same background. Everybody does not have the same thought process, because if we did, how effective would we be as universities if everybody just thought the same way, right? If everybody had the same background, if everybody did the same thing. I think it's a quote by, I forgot his first name, by General Patton from World War II. He says, if everybody's thinking the same thing, then somebody isn't thinking, right? So we have to think about that when it comes to diversity and why it's important, right? Bringing a whole new perspective, right? That comes with the diversity. And it also teaches us facts that we never knew. So Michelle said, I usually use myself as an example of tough times. George Patton, yeah, that's right. To help bring down the guarded defense. Then I load on my knowledge and they begin to relax in the chair across the table. That's how I've gotten the trust. Exactly. Eye contact is very good, and body language. I'm glad you said that because body language matters. Making good eye contact, being patient, letting the person finish. Because one of the things that we often do tough conversations is before the person gets whatever comes out of their mouth, we interrupt them and object instead of peacefully, making eye contact. Let the person know that you're listening. Some things we might want to be mindful of is um, not necessarily kind of maybe sitting with our arms folded or kind of just tapping on the table or something like that, because that gives the idea that I'm being impatient and I don't want to hear what you have to say. But we want to be careful in that because body language does matter, and we also want to remember, hit a pause button and reflect. Right? There's sometimes we respond to respond, but we're not responding to understand. I know we hear that quote a lot. Um, Being able to pause, reflect on what this person is saying, because it's impossible to hear a statement and immediately understand that statement and be able to see how that statement applies to us and others around us. And a lot of times when we immediately respond to something, we're doing it out of a state of defensiveness, and we don't want to do that. We always want to pause and reflect, because that means that, number one, you are assuming that this person is saying what they're saying with the best intentions, and you're also trying to understand so that you're able to reflect in a way because you have the best intentions. All right. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. That is one of the golden rules of communication. All right. Like I said on the previous slide, nonverbal language counts. The way that we look, the way that we posture ourselves, the way that we move, the way that we make eye contact, the words, even though it is verbal, the words that we choose. All right. Because words last a long time. We also want to kind of avoid accusational language. We don't want to use words that are always certain, like always, never. We don't want to do that, because anytime we say those types of words, it kind of gives this stuck mindset perspective that and what I mean by that is that we're looking at a situation and we're pointing the finger at somebody else and saying that, this is what's happening. You don't have the capacity to change. You're not trying to change, and I don't ever see you trying to change. But better words to use is come up several times, or it's common, or something like that. And you don't want to use words like, you know, in certain contexts, you don't want to use words like you, um, or differentiating yourself as me or I. In certain contexts, it's okay to use those words, but you don't want to use those words with always and never, because those give more of an accusational tone. Um, Understanding that emotions are going to rise in tough conversations. All right. We're human. We yeah, it does sound like marriage counseling. But it works in other capacities. Um, we Emotions are going to rise. We're human. We respond to things. All right. Um, we still and one of the things about emotions that we want to realize, emotions are not bad. Emotions, a mentor told me, emotions just mean you care. right? You might have a different care than I do, but overall, if we're all emotional and we feel deeply about something, it just means we care, right? And the only thing that we need to do is understand why we care so much about certain things and be able to try to accommodate and work through those. Um, Not talking also sends a message. Silence is one of the loudest messages that can be given. Um, because when there comes a time for tough conversations and we don't speak, it can be very disheartening sometimes because it comes off as not being interested or not being willing to try to work out problems. You know, if you ever had a disagreement with somebody and you go to them and you try to work it out and they're just not really trying to talk to you, it comes off as, you know, here I am, I'm trying to work things out because I'm, uh, you know, I care about our relationship, whether it's coworkers, friends, family, whatever. And it shows that this person is not willing to work on it with you. So we want to um, give that message. Um, and tough times can happen at the worst times. Life is so unpredictable, and you guys already know this. Things happen to us where we had no idea it was coming. With COVID-19, we had no idea in 2019 it was going to blow up the way that it did. But you know, we had to make it through those moments as universities, departments, institutions. We had to work through those things, and we did. All right. And Michelle said this is also where gender matters. Exactly. Um, we, you know, going into the diversity area, we need to be aware of how um, communication is perceived based on gender. Being aware of that, and that's where diversity training is very valuable as well. Being aware of those um, labels, stereotypes, things like that, and bias. We want to not incorporate that in how we assess and what someone says because it has nothing to do with gender. It's all in that person's opinion and how they feel. All right. Uh, we all have different styles of communication. We have, you know, facts, emotions, blunt, inspiration. All right. Um, a statistical person may be factual. They want to know what's on paper, what's the policy, not necessarily in how we feel. Right. And I've heard the the quote, um, facts don't care about feelings. And to a person who is an emotional communicator, um, that is dismissive of how they feel. All right. We can incorporate both into a conversation. We don't have to be just black and white in our conversations. We are humans. We're multidimensional. We're able, you know, as the old saying goes, we're able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We can hear facts and we can feel emotions at the same time within a conversation. Um, you have those who are blunt, right? Some people who are blunt, they like to get straight to the point. And honestly, I'm one of those communicators. I like to get straight to the point. I'm kind of a mixture between facts and blunt, and just having my situations or you know meetings or discussions with people who may be emotional or inspirational. You know, my old communication style before I became self-aware of it, I'm just like, I'm not trying to hear that right now. These are the facts. This is what we need to go on, and this is what we need to do to make a solution. Who cares about how we feel, right? But over time, I've learned that how we feel matters a lot, just as much as facts. Um, because leadership styles, relationships with coworkers and colleagues, delegation, using that diplomacy, all of those involve emotions, right? And you can't communicate effectively if you're just blunt all the time. I'm not saying that blunt is wrong, because we can be blunt and get straight to the point, but we need to factor in how it may make someone feel emotionally. And being able to lead and have that interaction with folks, um, it's okay to be inspirational. Some people are really, really inspirational. They always look on the bright side, and they're, you know, regardless of the facts, how we feel at the end of the meeting or at the end of the conversation, we need to have something to look forward to. to make sure we make the next step. All right. Why can't we all be Sheldon Coopers? Good question. And be prepared to listen and shift your style. All of us have these a little bit of communication styles in us, and some may outwear. They may be a higher percentage of one over the other, but it's okay to shift those. Be blunt when you need to be blunt. Be emotional when you need to be emotional. Bring the facts when we need it. But at the end, I think all of us should try to strive to be inspirational. At the end of the conversation, to make note what happened, what went right, what didn't right, was the timing good, was it the right time to have that conversation, was it the right place, all right? Did we not have all the facts, all right? And what was the result of the meeting? Did we disagree with each other, or did we agree? What are some of the things that we disagreed on? What are some of the things that we saw or agreed on that we, can come together on? You always want to evaluate your conversations, because that sets the precedent for what can happen in the next conversation to keep the progress going. Because a lot of times we leave our conversations with how we feel. All right. This made me feel this way and I didn't like it and I don't want to have this conversation again. But look at some of these things on both ends. Did we have this conversation at the right time? Did I use the correct style with this person? Because depending on who you're talking to, going back to the previous slide, the person you're talking to may not want to hear the facts. They just want you to get straight to the point of what you're trying to say, right? So knowing our communication styles and knowing how somebody receives, knowing their communication style, that can help us with evaluating as well. All right. And the biggest thing is that at the end of these conversations, we're able to build trust, like I said previously, right? Trust is not always about getting the answer right. It's about getting through the conversation and being able to have the conversation, right? We always, we can look for solutions, but it's not always about having the right answer for everything. One of the things is that never be afraid to say, I don't know, or I'm not sure. Always trying to have the answer kind of can come off as trying to be politically correct. And remember, we're not running for office. We're colleagues. We're working with each other. It looks bad if a politician says, I don't know, because we start to question that person's leadership. But our position is not necessarily from an election standpoint in most cases, but it's from the standpoint of, this is my job and I'm doing my job to help you do yours. And we're on the same team, right? We're in this boat together. So being able to have that conversation and be able to be truthful and honest and vulnerable shows that I trust you and you trust me. Because one of the biggest ways to show trust of someone else is to be vulnerable with them. All right. It can help keep us motivated. And like I said, start sentences with I. Going back to when I said don't use that, don't use I or you or me with absolutes. Always use it in a context that is, more general and more based in reality instead of how we feel, right? Because when we say always, never, that's more of how we feel, not really reality. So when we say things or start sentences with I, it shows accountability and it shows leadership and it shows that you're ready to show up and hear whatever has to be said and be able to make those resolutions afterwards. All right. So your employment assistance program assists with these types of topics and also assists with these types of webinars. And we understand that sometimes being self-aware, understanding others, being observant to have those communication styles can be challenging sometimes. And this is why we have these services. They're available to you as an employee or anyone in your household or that's a dependent. It's confidential. You get 6 in-person counseling sessions per issue, per year, and per household member. All right. They also have financial and legal consultants. And you can see the contact information here is 24/7, 365 You see the website and the phone number as well. This, if you can take out your phone really quick, scan the QR code with your camera, and fill out this evaluation. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to fill out these evaluations because it helps us improve in the future. So feel free to say the things that you like, some things that that you think should stay, some things that you think might need to be changed a little bit. Please feel free to let me know. I really value your input, and I would like to hear back from you guys. Are there any questions?